All right, our chief political analyst, Todd, is here.
Hey there,
Chuck,
Kristen.
weigh in on this conversation we are having, because I know you're watching a lot. What are your top lines tonight?
Well, I mean, look, here's the sort of the way to watch. There's one way to watch tonight, and the reason we put it this way is really, you know, if this night's at all interesting, it's all due to these East Coast states. One of it, of course, is timing, right? When you win a race, sometimes when it's called, it matters, right? And to me, you know, if Nikki Haley wants to feel good about tonight, winning Virginia tonight would give that sort of, and she's got a realistic chance. This is one of those states, and this is something I'm watching for. I mean, I'm with Marc here. This is, you know what the score, you know Donald Trump's winning tonight. The question is, how big is the victory going to be, and how many warning signs are there for the general? All these places where Trump was vulnerable 8 years ago, Virginia is a great example of one. Marco Rubio, basically a whole bunch of independents, everybody in Northern Virginia said, you got to vote for Marco Rubio to stop Donald Trump. Well, this year it's, you got to vote for Nikki Haley to stop Donald Trump. Are there more of those voters or less? Right? Rubio lost Virginia by 4 points. That to me is a way to, like, what's tonight look like? So it's not that I'm saying this is a one-state race for her, but in many ways it is, because everything else will get colored by how successful she is in Virginia, because it's early and because it's there. You know, I'm a little bit, you know, I'm very curious. How many of these voters are just Democrats wanting to send a message to Trump, and how many of these are really Republicans who want to send, who are like, hey, can we slow the roll here? We're not 100% convinced that Trump is the guy. I think that's the difference between whether Nikki Haley wins anything tonight or not. If she doesn't win anything tonight, I think it's proof most of her voters are already Biden voters.
Great point, Chuck. I'm going to ask you to come join us over at the table. We're going to continue this conversation. Marc, pick up on where Chuck leaves off, which is this idea of Trump's vulnerabilities, because that is really one of the storylines, perhaps the biggest storyline that we're watching tonight. Where is he vulnerable? Or, because it's Super Tuesday, has he started to consolidate more support? Virginia will tell us a lot. What else are you going to be looking for?
Yeah, when I look at, I'm looking ahead to a lot of the general election polling that we have seen, and which actually shows Donald Trump not only winning the national vote, which is something that never happened in 2019 or 2020. There was not a single day he was beating Joe Biden head-to-head. RCP average, Real Clear Politics average, has him up 2 right now. I know it's early and it's going to change. And also in the swing states. So I think a lot of this, what we're seeing, are either independents and Democrats who weren't planning to vote for Donald Trump anyway, or some who are, much like I spent 2016 campaign with then Governor Mike Pence. We spent the last 6 weeks of our campaign basically telling Republicans it's time to come home. So are many of them already making that case where, yeah, I like Nikki Haley, she's young, she's a new voice, but if it comes down to it head-to-head, I'm taking Donald Trump over Joe Biden.
Yeah, Cornell, I'm hearing Democrats talk a lot about Trump's vulnerabilities. Look at how vulnerable he is in the general. Do you think that Democrats are over-indexing on some of these vulnerabilities, which are real, but are they over-indexing on it?
Well, no, in the end, it's each candidate has a story to tell. And listen, I think we know the story that Donald Trump has to tell because he's told it before. And to that point about the polls, look, I've said this before. Heck, I've said it to you. I think Donald Trump is at his ceiling, right? And we've seen in past elections, he's a 47, 48% proposition. And to the point about, you know, whether or not he loses any support from Republicans. Look, I've been on this play before in 2008 when I was working for a guy by the name of Obama, and people were going, a lot of Hillary Clinton voters aren't going to actually support Barack Obama. And you know what they did? They went and supported Barack Obama. Now, I think the lion's share will do the same, but this is a little different, right? There is some people who have some real hangups with the criminality and with the convictions. So is that a different variable? Maybe, but I think Donald Trump is at his ceiling. He gets what he's going to get, and they stick with it.
Yeah, Cornell, you take me to my next point. Chuck, you and I have spent, from the beginning of this race, a lot of time talking about these criminal indictments against former President Trump. Would they start to impact him as they piled up? He's only gotten stronger in the primary, but we're going to have his first actual criminal court case this month. Do you think it plays differently in the general? And I ask it against this backdrop. Polls show he's beating Biden right now. But if he's convicted, polls show Biden ekes out a win.
Well, convicted of what?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, right.
And that does matter because E. Jean Carroll, he's been adjudicated as a rapist. Okay. And it didn't move the needle. I don't see how anything Alvin Bragg touches here because it's about Trump's sex life, even though it does tie to politics. And, I'm not going to... There's plenty of people who could make the legal argument here that he should be held accountable. The point is, are the voters going to hold him accountable? I think that's already baked in. The answer is no. We've seen it with Jean Carroll. The only one that could move the needle is Jack Smith because of who could testify, right? It becomes a parade of not Democrats, not Alvin Bragg and Fani Willis and Jack Smith trying to prosecute, but Mike Pence and Mark Meadows and Bill Barr, perhaps, right? Some pretty credible people. Is that trial going to happen?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, like, the Biden campaign and Democrats have to stop hoping somebody else does their job. Like, this has been the establishment wing of the Republican Party. Mitch McConnell has been always hoping somebody else would take care of Trump. And there's always been this mythological, well, something else will take care. Maybe the courts will take care of Trump. Maybe the Supreme Court will keep him off the ballot. How about go campaign? Go beat him. Go beat him in the campaign, because ultimately that's the most decisive way you can defeat Donald Trump.
Can I lean in on that point? My theory of the case is it's actually not about Trump, right? To your point, if they're not going to move off of him after he's been found guilty of sexual assault, they're not going to move off of him. And again, he's at 47, 48%. Right. It's what happens to the rest of the vote out there. And the rest of the vote out there is not about Donald Trump. It's about the story that Joe Biden has to tell. And look, when you look inside the polling, right, the funny thing is, and I wrote an article about this, when you look inside the polling, where he's doing the least well is among that Obama continuum. Those younger voters, right, they're not breaking Trump, but they're not happy about what they've seen change, and they want change.
And didn't we also see this weekend in one of the polls, it might have been the New York Times poll, about 10% of the voters for Biden in 20 are now flipping back over to Trump in 2024. There's a case of buyer's remorse, which could also alter those numbers a little bit.
And you're not seeing that same flip happen in Trump's direction.
I do think that this spring polling, I was alive for President Dukakis. I was alive for President Kerry. I was alive for President Romney. I mean, when you're winning, okay, there is a point where that especially, who's winning the primaries right now?
Yeah.
Right? It's Donald Trump.
Right.
Biden's not really winning anything. He's the incumbent party. John Kerry's best days were between Super Tuesday in March of that year, correct me if I'm wrong, Cornell, till what day did the Swift boat ad start running? August 4th,
Until
something
that
like
first
that.
day of that ad, yeah.
And the fact is, I think the next 6 weeks are going to be fascinating. The Biden campaign has a huge financial advantage in this moment. This is what every incumbent always hopes for. Once they get their opponent, you want to be financially ahead so you can define your opponent. Now, how do you define Donald Trump these days? There's no, obviously, but the point is they can sort of frame their argument and see what works here. I'm not sure what's going to work. I don't know what character attacks work. I don't know whether they need to re-educate. A lot of people have memory hold the first 3 years of the Trump presidency because we've all memory hold everything pre-COVID, right? This is not a Trump issue. This is like, it's astonishing how much I have forgotten that happened in life before COVID. Does it work? Does it move the needle? And that, to me, is going to be a real test in the next 6 weeks. They should be able to get this race back to even, if not slightly ahead, assuming they really come in full force in the next 6 weeks. It all starts Thursday.
It all starts Thursday. Chuck, quickly, you have a best case, worst case scenario for Trump tonight in terms of...
I wonder if we want to put it up there. Do you want to go to the board?
Let's put it back. Yeah, let's put it back up.
Get it up there real quick for folks to see. And really, it all depends on what I was saying. Look, he either is going to clinch this nomination next week or he clinches it the following week. A lot of it has to do tonight. Does he cross the 1,000? Essentially, does he cross the 1,000 delegate barrier tonight? Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with what I said earlier, right? Which is, does he win? I'm going to get over everything. And does he win every single state tonight?
Yeah.
I think it's possible he does.
Yeah.
Right? He could do that. But if he doesn't, win, that's why Virginia is going to tell us everything. Because if somehow Nikki Haley's going to pull the upset in Virginia, probably means she wins Minnesota. I assume that also Colorado, all three are very similar electorates as far as, and the rules that go with there. That's a different conversation tonight than if Donald Trump essentially sweeps everything and she's able to cherry pick delegates here or there in the suburban congressional districts where she's allowed to do it. So, I think that it's sort of like we know, goes back to Marc's point, we know the outcome of the game, we just don't know the final score.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.